Tell us more about Randal Quarles and this appointment.
Well, first of all, this seat is very important, and it's a newer seat. It kind of came out of the whole Dodd-Frank re-regulation, where they said the Federal Reserve needs someone to be. We already have one vice chair. There's the chair, the vice chair. Right now, that's Janet Yellen and Stan Fisher. But they said we need a vice chair of bank supervision, not so much monetary policy, but what the banks are doing and their leverage and how much risk they're taking. Someone has to be watching that, because that's where the systemic risk can come in. That's what we saw in the financial crisis. So this is a very important post to fill. Now, you could call it the top bank cop. What are some of Randal Quarles' qualifications? Let's look at his curriculum vitae for starters, right? He worked at the Treasury Department under Bush. He was an undersecretary for domestic finance. Why is that important? Because it has to do with bonds and issuance of bonds. This is something that is just the heart and soul of what happens on Wall Street and how Fed policy is transmitted from the Federal Reserve's action to the markets, to the economy. He was also an undersecretary for international affairs. Now, he's seen as someone who knows banking and bank regulation very well, but he didn't help write the Dodd-Frank regulation, nor did he oppose it. He's seen as a pragmatist, not as an ideologue. Rounding out his resume, former IMF U.S. executive director, a lot of experience in private equity. He worked at Carlyle Group. He's at Synoger Group in Utah now. So this is a man with a lot of experience and a lot of understanding for how finance and money work. This is also very, very important. Now, he will fill the shoes that Dan Tarullo filled under up until about last year. He left in, April of this year. President Obama could never get the Senate to have the hearings to approve several people he wanted to appoint to key positions. That's why there's empty positions at the Board of Governors now.
But was Dan Tarullo in that position?
He was ad hoc. He never was officially appointed to the position. He just
but he played
did the job. He definitely played the role. He was seen as one who was more pushing for more rules, you know, and not necessarily a bad thing. People feel you need to have a lot of capital regulation, all kinds of things. And so the question now is, will Quarles be the guy who kind of simplifies, people say maybe a more neutral stance with the banks? But I think that remains to be seen. But again, I think this is a very important point, that by stalling, Republicans were able to not let Barack Obama fill these seats. But of course, the Republicans now have a majority in the Senate and in the House. So presumably, someone like Randal Quarles will get through. And we also have to wonder then, Marvin Goodfriend, professor of economics at Carnegie Mellon, former director of research at the Atlanta Fed, very well-respected monetary economist. Also, Bob Jones, chairman and CEO of Old National Bank Corp., another name that's in the running to fill a couple more of these vacant seats at the Board of Governors. Does this mean that Donald Trump has, got his, appointment-making engine revved up, and we're going to see more of those as well? So very interesting. Randal Quarles, no surprise. This has been out there since about mid-April, but interesting also in the midst of everything else that's going on at the White House, that this comes to the top of the queue today.